Well, here we are, a couple of football friends. It's the Musers, the podcast, Cowboys edition at the end of the NFL season. It's George and Bob, your two football friends. And we all get excited about the Super Bowl. Hey, it's the big game and everything. And then when it's over, Bob, it's really over. Now we're in the off season.
We have entered the off season. 31 Sundays, I think, separate us from future Sunday football. So start the countdown. But you're going to have to figure out, I can't remember if it's 30 or 31 Sundays where you're going to have to kid yourself that other things can take the place of the National Football League in your hearts.
I know
on that beautiful day. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's we're used to this, George. We can't play year-round football. We've tried, and so we have to put the little tiny football teams into their little tiny beds and let them rest up for the new season. But because Roger Goodell and Pete Rozelle and all these forefathers and builders of our sport understood the year-long news cycle, it never actually fully stops except for roughly June 1 to July 15 or so. They give us about 6 weeks to reacquaint ourselves with the outdoors and grass and things of that nature. But now it's on to the other stuff.
The other stuff, as the Seattle Seahawks are the champions of the National Football League, 29-13 over the Patriots. And there's a lot of things that relate to the Cowboys here. Mm-hmm. We're going to hear from a former Cowboy here in just a moment who we talked a lot about last week, and DeMarcus Lawrence. And with Seattle winning, that's now their second Super Bowl title, and they've been to 4 since the last time the Cowboys went 30 years ago. And now, Bob, that list of teams that has gone to not 1, but 2 Super Bowls between when the last time the Cowboys went, Super Bowl 30, and now is pretty darn long.
Yes. So let's do this. Let's start in the NFC, and let's not even do going to the Super Bowl. Let's go to winning Super Bowl. So these teams, since the 1995 season, have won multiple Super Bowls. There's only been 30, so the maximum number would be 15 teams could win 2 Super Bowls. I'm very good at math. So in the NFC, Seattle is one. The New York Giants is another. The Philadelphia Eagles is another. The Los Angeles Rams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Green Bay Packers. 6 NFC teams have won 2 Super Bowls. I don't believe any of them have 3. So 6 NFC teams. Now to the AFC we go. Denver has 2. The Ravens have 2. The Steelers have 2 during that span. And then we have the Kansas City Chiefs with 3, and the New England Patriots with 6.
Yeah.
So I have 5 AFC teams, 6 NFC teams. That means since those 30 years when you were in Tempe, Arizona, because I guarantee you were in Tempe.
Oh, yeah.
For Sun Devil Stadium's last and only Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
We have 6 NFC, 5 AFC, 11 different teams have not only won a Super Bowl, but, George, they've won 2.
Wow.
To prove it wasn't a fluke, they went back and did it again, often with a completely different roster and coaching staff and literally everything, which is pretty much Seattle's story. I know their GM is the same in John Schneider, I believe. But I think that's it.
Yeah,
it's not even the same owner. It's Paul Allen passed away, and Jody Allen took the trophy because, of course, here in America, we have to reward the billionaire to be the first to hold the trophy. And then, of course, her thanks to Big Brother buying the Seahawks and then passing away is to immediately put the champion Seahawks on the market and sell them.
Yeah, that's a bizarre twist to it.
Yes.
Sam Darnold finishes off his amazing story that we talked about last week. I was happy for him. Seattle going forward, man, they got a young team. They only have, I believe it's 9 players over the age of 30. Their oldest player is 35. They have some big free agents like Kenneth Walker III.
Yes.
That they've got to get done. They've got a few on defense, but you could see a path because they're not paying Sam Darnold $60 million a year, that they can get these other free agents done, the ones they want, and they've got good collection of young players who they've drafted here in the last 3 or 4 years. I'm not saying this is a mini dynasty because those are so hard to come by these days, but by the way they've been built, you're going to be putting up with Seattle at least for the next few years.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Seattle is a very balanced team, and that's why you should probably fear what they're capable of moving forward. Now, the balance to that, as a team with arguably no superstars besides Smith and Jigba, who's just breaking out in the third year of his career, and he's a baby too. If you go back and look at his Ohio State file, he only really played 1 season there. His first and third year at Ohio State, he was kind of buried. His first year at Ohio State, you would not believe the wide receiver depth chart. That was the COVID year, 2020. And I mean, they had every wide receiver in the NFL was playing on Ohio State's offense back then. It was absolutely staggering. I'm trying to remember the whole group, but I believe Marvin Harrison was still there. Emeka Egbuka was actually part of that mix. And then you all the guys in his class, including Chris Olave, Smith and Jigba, and I'm trying to think. There's one more major one that was in front of them, and I can't think of that right now, and my mind's going blank. But anyway,
I do remember when Njigba went to Ohio State.
Oh, Garrett Wilson.
There you go, Garrett Wilson. Yeah, that was, and it seems like both Wilson and Njigba were being courted by Texas at the time, and they both ended up going up there. It may have been separate years, but there's a Texas tie in there that's I remember him at Rockwall and Jigba, and he was just outrageous.
Would you watch that? Did you go see him?
No, I just remember him being a player talked about and his highlights,
Because here's my dream. My dream, George, is that you go to all the high school games, all of them. And I don't mean just football and basketball and maybe baseball. I want you to be Mr. High School.
So I'm helicoptering around to all of these stadiums and watching these games or watching them on tape.
Yes.
Okay.
And then at a certain point of the season, when you're really locked in on this is the generational talent I need to take Bob to see, then you come pick me up and we go to one game so that I can say I saw him play in high school.
Okay.
And then every year we do it. And so you pick a basketball player. Maybe it's isn't Marcus Spears' kid like the best player in the country?
That's what I hear, yeah.
I think he plays up in Addison or something. But this area is so ridiculously packed with unbelievable future pro stars, both in basketball, baseball, and football. Not as much hockey, although shout out to our girl from Capel, who's on the U.S. Women's Olympic hockey team this week. She scored yesterday against the Swiss.
How about that?
I mean, Capel. We just
hockey factory.
I've never seen Flower Mound turn out a hockey superstar. But anyway, yeah, that would be my dream because I'm watching the Super Bowl and I'm watching Jackson Smith and Jigba up against Christian Gonzalez, and they're both DFW guys.
The Colony.
Both left DFW and Texas in general with all these football factories. They opted out to Ohio State and Oregon, and now they're meeting in the NFL. And you could argue, I don't know how successful you would be, but it's not crazy to say Smith and Jigba's the best wide receiver in the league, and Gonzalez is the best corner in the league right now. And they're both DFW guys that were right under our nose forever. I just don't have the hard drive space to do it, so I'm turning that over to you.
Okay. Well, that's fine. My son is back in the high school game now. He's going from college back to high school, and I will be attending some games. and I already know of maybe a guy that's on the radar. I tell you what, I would have told you a couple of years ago when my son was on the coaching staff at Austin Westlake and they won the state championship. I would have told you, come watch this guy, Bob. He's the best high school quarterback I've ever seen. Not that I've seen every high school quarterback in the history of Texas even.
Yeah.
But Cade Klubnik is the best high school quarterback I've ever seen.
Okay. And then I could say I saw Cade Klubnik when he was a lad. I honestly have regrets. Like I'm half joking here, although it would be fun for you to have to go through 500 games and like 300 teams or whatever it is to be on the search every year. But I can't imagine how cool it would be to watch Myles Garrett in like 11th grade just destroy everybody in his path.
Isn't he the one where we used to see the old footage and it was like his JV team or something and he was 6'5" and they were 5'11"?
Yeah, and like a poor offensive tackle from whatever high school is trying to block Myles Garrett, and you just imagine the mismatches that the football field offers, and again, Texas Metroplex high school football, even the bad teams could probably curb stomp my Wisconsin high schools. So the level of play even for the bad teams is still probably very high, but there are guys that come along like Adrian Peterson or Myles Garrett that are worldwide football legends. They're just but they all are 14 at some point. And even my Kyler Murray stories and just all the things that dazzle us about this football world, they were all in 4th grade at some point, George. And if you would just take on that responsibility to make sure that I see Larry Johnson next time he's playing high school basketball in Dallas, I would really appreciate that.
I'm writing that down. High school scouting. That's what I'm in charge of next year on the show.
Yeah, we'll get you a hat or whatever.
Scout. Okay, a couple things from the Super Bowl. Seattle's defense just awesome. As you mentioned, They don't have a lot of stars, but I love the way they play collectively as a defensive unit, which I think speaks a lot about Mike McDonald and the culture that he has established there. And how much credit should we give Aiden Dirty, who is the defensive coordinator there, former Cowboys defensive assistant? I bet his name is all over the place next year as a potential head coach.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, when we talk about building a dominant defense, we obviously spend a lot of time looking for guys like Myles Garrett or guys like Micah Parsons. And so, what you would have to say about the 2025 Seahawks is that it doesn't necessarily appear, at least, from a distance, that they've got any. Well, they don't have. Okay, here you go. They don't have a single guy with more than 7 sacks. Okay. So they get to the quarterback. They had Drake May running for his life. But in 2025, Texas Longhorn Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, and Uchenna Nwasu, the former Charger, all had 7 sacks. And then DeMarcus Lawrence had 6. And then it drops down to a number of other guys at 2 and 3. And so it's obviously way more difficult to get to 50 sacks without ever having an 8-sack guy. I mean, think about how tough that is. But it also makes it impossible to defend you, or to prepare for you, I should say. Offenses don't necessarily defend against defenses, but they have to prepare for them, and they have to protect, and they have to give their quarterback a chance. And I think Drake May had a lousy game, but he was under duress. And what was interesting was the takeaway from a lot of people was that the New England offensive line just got overwhelmed. And I think if you go back and watch the tape, and you would probably have to be a psycho to really break down that tape of a game you didn't totally care about, but I think you would find that for the most part, each offensive lineman did okay. And I know everybody's talking about Matt Campbell, the left tackle, and he did not, cover himself in glory after a really good rookie year. But the point is, he didn't lose 10 times.
No.
He lost 4 times, and that's not great, but it's also not incredibly uncommon. The point is, Seattle's scheme And the varied way they use their guys was able to generate free runners and confusion. And so even when they bring 4, George, you don't know which 4. And so the left side of your line is anticipating a blitz. The right side thinks, nah, we're fine. And the McDonald scheme, especially on that blitz, they ran 2 different times. And the first time they got a sack from the safety or the corner, Devin Witherspoon, the slot corner.
Oh, okay.
And then the second time, Witherspoon got there and generated that essentially will be scored a pick 6, but I think that was probably a strip sack and a touchdown. So 2 blitzes that were exactly the same, and they both got to Drake May. They got sacks both times, and they got the ball loose and a defensive touchdown. And so that's not really an offensive line failure, except for everybody knowing their job, everybody, covering every gap, and then the quarterback having the common sense, or at least the awareness and the experience to see, I don't have anybody to account for the slot corner, and he seems to be sneaking this way, and what am I going to do? And look, there's nothing more mentally taxing than playing quarterback in the NFL. So I'm not saying Drake May is a big failure. Heck, he almost won the MVP. But he did look like a second-year quarterback in the Super Bowl.
With a bad shoulder. I don't think he's 100%. And
no, I think probably not. And, he hasn't been great in these entire playoffs, to be honest.
Yeah.
And you could argue the Patriots reached their ceiling and then some. And they just finally played a heavyweight on even terms, and the heavyweight fed them to the Lions. It wasn't a fair fight. The Seahawks were clearly better, especially on defense, and I thought it was a masterclass from that Seahawks defense. So much so that the Seahawks offense could have easily scored 40, and instead kind of, in my mind, adjusted to a pretty conservative game plan once they realized that we can just kick field goals and beat these guys because they're not going to drive.
3rd and long, let's run it and kick field goal. Let's not worry about picking up.
Take the points today. We're not playing Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. We're playing a team that can't get out of its own way right now.
They can't get across midfield. You mentioned DeMarcus Lawrence. We talked a lot about him last week, the 11-year Cowboy who went and signed with Seattle. And on his way out of town, as he went to Seattle, he said these words when he landed as a Seahawk during free agency last March. And I went back and listened to this because we've been, paraphrasing what he said, but let's just hear it one more time, what he had to say when he left Dallas because they didn't offer him and went to Seattle.
Dallas is my home. I made my home there. My family lives there. I'm forever going to be there. But, I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah.
I forgot he worded it that way, Bob. I know for sure I'm never going to win a Super Bowl there. It's up. In some ways, it's not up for interpretation because he's pretty blunt. Yeah, they can't. Right. They're never going to win. I guess you could throw in, I'm getting late in my career. I want to go somewhere where I think I have a better chance. But I forgot he worded it that way. I know I never am going to win a Super Bowl there. I'm really happy for DeMarcus Lawrence. I have no ill will towards him at all. And I think some of that was aimed at the guy who was playing on the other side of him, and Micah Parsons, who immediately came back and told him that was a bunch of clown-ass. And then, as we all know, Micah gets traded to Green Bay. But, man, that quote has been rattling around in my head for a couple of days.
Well, I hope more than anything it's rattling around in the Jones family's heads. I hope they're affected by it. I really do, because the major theme of you and I doing this podcast and kind of keeping the interest levels of Cowboy fans that want to listen to it at some sort of a level of optimism is is a belief that somewhere along the line, Jerry Jones specifically, but now I kind of join them at the hip, Jerry and Steven, as the Jones boys. And I always think to myself, there has to be a time at some point where they get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I've probably said that exact quote on this exact podcast at some point in the past. And what's quite alarming about it is I know I'm kind of the new guy at the ticket in some respects still, but I've been here 28 Cowboys seasons. And so I'm getting older, George. I don't know if you can tell that from the white beard, but I'm slowing down a little bit. I'm not quite as quick twitch as I once was.
You
as
were
a speed
definitely
rusher.
a quick twitch back in the day, Bob.
Can no longer take off from the free throw line.
I've seen your high school basketball highlight video. It's really impressive.
Never a Skywalker, but I will say it's really impressed me how they never seem sick and tired of being sick and tired. They always seem stubbornly married to the success they had in the early 90s as proof of concept that they have done nothing wrong at any point.
We got this.
And they see nothing but good things.
We know how to get there.
And so because of that, they've never faced their problems and admitted to their problems. And then, of course, what you would do when you admit to having a problem is attempt to change your ways, right? And that's never happened. And so there are these moments in time where you say, well, surely this will get them to look in the mirror. And I'm sure they have self-reflective moments. But a quote like this, said with the certainty that DeMarcus said it with, it's definitely calling his shot, and it's definitely opening him up for criticism, and he's clearly pandering to a new fan base that just handed him a bunch of money. But I also kind of love that it worked out for him because he's a bit of a proxy for trying something different in this Dallas football universe. Is I want to try something different. For him, that meant I want to play somewhere else. Many who grew up Cowboy fans don't have the ability to change their entire life to go to a new city and follow a team they don't really care about as their change.
Yeah.
There's definitely not $30 million in it for Tim and Mesquite to change which team he cheers for. DeMarcus Lawrence was incentivized. We are not. We just bravely wait for that day where they do things differently. And maybe they are. Maybe they are changing little things under our noses like Christian Parker and maybe Brian Schottenheimer was that the year before, and maybe these smaller changes will lead to something big. But for now, all of our heroes, DeMarcus Ware to DeMarcus Lawrence, have had to go elsewhere to finally win big. And they're proving, by the way, that at no point is it actually the man, the player. That's the other thing is we end up tarnishing like the careers of a guy like Tony Romo or Des Bryant or Jason Witten or Tyron Smith or any of these guys that are unable to ever win anything. And so people look at their careers and say, was it really that great? I mean, what did they ever win? Did they ever get out of the wild card round? Did they ever get out of the divisional round? And that, it's a frustrating conversation to basically feel like Sean Lee's career matters less than guys who have success in February in the biggest venue, but that's kind of how the sport works. And so if Sean Lee signs with the 49ers or signs with the Rams or the Packers, maybe he wins. Maybe Jason Witten has to pick the right team that will go win. But we all say, well, if our best players are actually confirmed to be really good when they join other organizations, well, then could our organization alter its field a little bit so we don't waste the careers of some of these special players we have now?
Yeah.
And so I realize it's a 3-decade issue, but honestly, George, right now is the moment in time where anybody could look at 2 30-year portraits of Cowboys football and show A and show B. And if that doesn't sadden you that this is what this franchise accomplished the first 30 years and this is what they've accomplished since, I don't know what else to say. That's Yeah, so anyway, DeMarcus Lawrence, I guess, has been vindicated. I'm really happy for him. I know certain people get really upset when somebody turns their back on the Cowboys organization, but I just remind them, these guys have one career, and it doesn't last long. And for them to chase being a champion, and by the way, I think he stays if the Cowboys say, we really want you to stay, we really want to make you feel special, and here's a deal that is market value for your services. I think he stays. So I don't think he said, I never want to put on this stinky uniform again. You guys stink. Get me out of here.
According to him, though, they never really gave him any sort of.
They never even picked up the phone because they knew that they would rather have Micah Parsons, and so they had earmarked all of DeMarcus's money for Micah, and then of course they lost them both, and that's water under the bridge. But to the player, he can't go back to when he was 23 years old. He has to chase whatever is still inside his heart for those final few seasons of his career, and I'm just happy that somebody was rewarded for all of their hard work.
Yes, and I'll leave it with this. I think as I went back and listened to his comments, Micah's return, the back and forth between those two, which was pretty entertaining. I guess what stuck with me was that's coming from a guy who was here for 11 years, and while he was upset that they didn't offer him anything to stay, and I think maybe it's as simple as that. That's what motivated the comment. You could also take it as this is a guy on the inside who says there's no way it's ever going to work here. Oof. And it's just, if you take it that way, obviously he can be proven wrong, but I think that's why that one really hit Cowboy fans last year, and it still hits when you hear that comment, because if you take it that way, that's a guy saying, hey, I don't care what they're selling. It ain't working. Check y'all. I'm going to Seattle.
Yeah, and I guess that's why when you're building this team in your brain, you want guys who move the culture needle a little bit and take it personally when they're even drafted here, that one of my goals is to have a successful NFL career. But my second goal, or maybe 1A, is to restore the Dallas Cowboys to the top of the National Football League.
Yep.
And I don't even know that a 21-year-old could be wired that way, but in my in our thought tank of what is the perfect guy, it's somebody that's not only obsessed about his success, but about raising this franchise, almost like a college coach would say, here we are at a sleeping giant, and I won't rest until this program is back where it belongs, or it gets to where, you always hear that when a college coach takes a job. And of course, just like DeMarcus Lawrence pandering to the Seahawks fans, a new college coach is pandering to the people that just signed him to a contract. Sure. But you just want to hear that I understand my challenge here. My challenge is not to finish second in our division. My challenge is to raise a franchise that has been wandering the wilderness in tattered clothes and hasn't had enough to eat for 30 years, and I want to rebuild this kingdom appropriately. And it might be a William Wallace thing that I have in my head, as they need Braveheart to play a middle linebacker for them. Amen. But that's that's what it feels like sometimes. And so if I'm in the scouting office, the job's already hard enough. We need quality football players, but now Bob wants us to get quality football players that think like Douglas MacArthur or something, in the Pacific Theater. So I'm not asking.
Maybe
for
that's
much,
a good question to ask at the combine. Do you know who Douglas MacArthur is? Okay.
How about Patton?
I want
Where
this
you
guy.
On Patton?
He knows who he is. As my dad always said, with the grace of God and a few Marines, MacArthur took back the Philippines. That's what.
There you go.
That's how Marines saw it, as he was an Army guy that he needed Marines to get that done. So
I love it.
There you go. A little history there for you as we talk Cowboys. And if the Seattle Seahawks are the standard in the NFL and the NFC, and the Cowboys are going to get there and they're going to knock them off their perch, they've got to get some things done here in the offseason. We know about the defense, but priority number one is what we're going to talk about next. here we go into the off season, and you can hear it in the tone of our voice. We don't have as much enthusiasm because football season is in the cooler for a few months. We keep the calendar going. We're going to get excited about free agency in March and the draft in April. The schedule release, Bob. What a big day that is. Whenever it is, April or May.
Absolutely.
And then training camp, and it all begins again. And for the Cowboys, they've got some work to do on the defensive side of the ball. But in these free agents who can go anywhere, and we mentioned Micah Parsons. I haven't seen the whole podcast yet, but I've seen that he's already pitching George Pickens to come to Green Bay on his latest edition because Micah loves podcasting more than we do, probably.
He's
such a podcaster.
There's no franchise that should consider George Pickens less than the Green Bay Packers, given how much they've spent on wide receivers here. That is, I don't know how to share this with Micah. So from one podcast to another, I would say he is completely trolling Jerry Jones with that news cycle.
Yeah, trying to drive the price up. And
yeah,
that is priority number one. Man, okay, you can say what you want about the Cowboys defense, but the offense showed some real signs. You get improvement in the offensive line. There's a semblance of a ground game. Better than that, Javonte Williams had a really good year. Get him a sidekick back there.
Yeah.
And get George Pickens back with CeeDee Lamb, and you're cooking on offense. Now, how do they get that done? They're going to have to do some restructuring. I keep hearing this, Bob, that he's going to be, well, the Cowboys are going to handle it like they always do, and they'll just franchise him.
Right.
I don't think that's going to sit well with George, my fellow George. I don't think he wants to be franchised. He wants some money.
Well, yeah, he probably does get in line on that front, but I do think that is question number one of the offseason. And, I mean, it's a constant push and pull with the Cowboys because you just saw the Seahawks win the world title, and the Seahawks are a pretty good example. I think the first thing to say about the Seahawks is here is a team that and I said this on the radio show yesterday, so I want to do it with you here.
Okay.
If you would have told me in August, Bob, I want you to tell me who's going to win the Super Bowl, and I'm going to give you 10 guesses. Okay? 10. There's only 32 teams in the league. You name 10 teams that you think can win the Super Bowl, and you've got to hit the Super Bowl, but I'm going to give you 10 shots, 10 strikes. Do you know how much better of a hitter you would be if you had 10 strikes, George?
Oh, yeah.
So I put my list together of this hypothetical. If you would have asked me in August, the 10 teams I would have picked to win this year's Super Bowl that just happened, I would have picked the Chiefs and the Eagles because they were there last year, the Bills and the 49ers, which I also think are kind of the co-powers in those conferences. Then I would have picked the Ravens and the Lions because I just think those are two smart teams as well. Then I probably would have taken the Commanders because they were in last year's championship game. And weren't the Ravens probably also there? So now we have the Chiefs, Eagles, Bills, Niners, Ravens, Lions, Commanders, Packers just got Micah, Rams just got Devontae Adams, and they still have Matthew Stafford. And then let's go the Bengals because they have Joe Burrow back healthy, and they kept Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Okay, those are my 10 teams. And the point of this exercise is to say none of them not only got to the Super Bowl or won the Super Bowl, but only one of those 10 actually even made the Final Four. So I guess the takeaway is this league is wide open at all times.
Yep.
So I know you wondered, are the Seahawks a team with staying power? I guess what I'm wondering is which team from the middle of the league is going to win next year's Super Bowl. Now, that's a little bit disingenuous and being a prisoner of the moment because we just got done with a decade, George, of Brady, Mahomes, Brady, Mahomes, Brady, Mahomes. So I mean, we can't act like it's random, pull a lever, almost Major League Baseball, where before the Dodgers, it's wow, this is a weird World Series, but it's just I think there's less randomness than we think, but at the same time, the Seahawks were nobody's. At least not in my top 10. If you wanted to say you would have taken them back in August as one of your top 10.
I mean, I guess you could have said, okay, they showed sign. They won 10 games last year. And what if Darnold is as good as he was in Minnesota? So I just didn't hear that talk until about midway through this season. And everyone's
and you know why?
Hey, what about Seattle?
You know why you didn't hear it? Because the Seahawks thought Geno Smith was a better option than Sam Darnold, and they tried to get something done with Geno before they kind of traded him to Las Vegas and ended up rallying. Like, they offered Geno Smith money, and they just couldn't come to terms on it. And so the Raiders and Pete Carroll went and got Geno Smith because they were familiar with him. And boy, you guys don't want him? We'll take him. We'll sign him at this deal. And so
I wonder if Geno wants a do-over. Yeah, I'll sign.
Well, yeah,
I'll take it.
And the NFL is all about what is Plan B, because Plan A doesn't always happen. Every team in the league is like, yeah, go find Mahomes. Yeah, there's only one. We better have a plan B, guys, because So anyway, I just took the scenic route, as I often do, but I want to point out here, the team that just won the Super Bowl has one player making more than $26 million, and it's Sam Darnold, and he's making $33.5. Okay, that's important to remember. Because now the Cowboys, if you just go on average annual value, which I do, which I think everybody should, because teams can get a little squirrely with putting, $98 million cap charge on a guy in a given year, and then everybody says he makes $98 million a year. No, he doesn't. He makes $60 a year. Dak does, but that's $60. CeeDee Lamb's at $34 a year, and now the franchise tag on a wide receiver is $28. So we're back at the same spot where, is this roster too top heavy, and is it too offensive skill position heavy? And I know the cap keeps going up, and I am a big believer that the cap is at times a very flexible thing, even if the Jones boys act like it's not. And the smart teams, and I will still say the Philadelphia Eagles are very smart, they are willing to have a much bigger cap now and then worry about it down the road when they're out of their window. And I wish the Cowboys would do the same thing. But regardless, the question ultimately is, are you crazy for making your three top-paid players quarterback, wide receiver? And this might even lead us back to the Micah conversation, or it might lead us forward to some people saying, yeah, they're going to franchise him, but it's not crazy that they would actually try to flip him once they secure his rights for 2026, almost like they did with Micah.
Interesting. I think you got to do it. I think if you,
I do too.
I think if you see this as a 3-year window here, and I'm talking about Dak in his prime, and this is what you got. I would try to be so dynamic on offense that maybe you're the Chiefs of a few years ago or the Rams of the late 90s, and that gets you to the Super Bowl because your offense is so hard to stop. Yes. And you may think, oh, come on, man. They were good this year, but they weren't that great. Man, they were really good when you consider they got less possessions because of a terrible defense. They got poor field position because of a defense that never got turnovers. And you give me that line. Let's say you can project that line to be better as Tyler Guyton and Tyler Booker and Cooper Beebe all grow up together, and you piece together a decent offensive line. You've got decent tight ends, and when you put those receivers together and Flanoy, man, why couldn't the Cowboys have this is going to sound crazy, Why couldn't they have the best offense in the league next year?
Yeah, they could. I mean, we saw a lot of flashes of it.
That's assuming you signed Javonte Williams as well, too. We got to get money to him. That's going to be a hard trick to do all that because someone may pay Williams more than the Cowboys are willing to.
So with Pickens, the tag is about 28. Okay. So when you say he may not like being tagged, he's going to want a bigger contract, I would say that's true, but it's also not unique to him. I think any player in their right mind would want what CeeDee Lamb got, which was a 4-year deal with 100 guaranteed.
Yes, but this is not your prototypical NFL player. That's where his personality, I think, comes into play. You could see that with Pickens if he's not.
I can, but does that actually make me want to tag him even more? Because if I think he would misbehave over the long term, then I would love to have him on just a 1-year deal, which incentivizes him not to be a malcontent.
Okay,
so
good point.
I mean, that's the thing is he would never play under the tag. He would be upset. He would stomp his feet, and he would do a hold-in. And, boy, George, he might even lay down on the trainer's table during a preseason game. And
I'm just afraid he may internalize it, and he's never quite right all year long because he sees maybe he outperforms CD again this year, and CD's healthy, but he's not getting paid. You know,
tag – well, okay, so if the tag's 28, just to set the market for people, Jamar Chase is the highest paid receiver at 40, then Justin Jefferson at 35, then CeeDee Lamb at 34, and then DK Metcalf amazingly got 33 from the Steelers. Garrett Wilson, 32.5, Scary Terry McLaurin, 32.3, A.J. Brown, speaking of model citizens, 32. And then we drop to the $30 million barrier. These guys are just scraping by in life. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 30. Tyreek Hill, 30. Brandon Ayuk, 30. Boy, that's a trifecta of interesting cases. And then just above the tag is T. Higgins, 28.7. And Jalen Waddle, 28.2. Would you give George Pickens the T. Higgins deal?
Well, hit me again with it. What was it?
Well, it's $28.7 a year. It's a 4-year deal for $115 million. What's interesting about that is somehow they got T. Higgins to sign a 4-year deal with only 41 guaranteed. That is far and away the lowest guarantee of any of these long-term contracts. Where I guess they said we're tagging you. We're not trading you to get a multi-year commitment. We're willing to give you, essentially $13 million more than the tag, but then we're going to have to do this on a year-by-year basis.
Yes, answer your question. Yes, if I'm the Cowboys, I would do that.
So would I. I wonder if he would.
See,
the tag. What the tag does is it gets a guy to negotiate, because once you get tagged, other than an offer sheet, which never happens, he's yours.
Yeah.
And so from there, we move right down the path, like with Micah, where either you're playing for us or you're playing for nobody. And then of course we have hurt feelings in training camp, because back in the old days, like 3 years ago, George, guys used to hold out. Now they hold in. And I thought the owners wanted this, but now I almost wonder if the owners hate it.
I think it's worse. I do too. Worse. That Parsons thing last year was awful. I think it ruins, not to be too hyperbolic, but I think it ruins the whole training camp, the vibe of it. It was just, it was bad, and it helped that become a very combustible situation that eventually drove Parsons out of town.
Yeah, and then you have people to this day saying he was faking his back injury, which is ridiculous. But also, I mean, when I say, are you faking a back injury, I mean, are you missing a meaningful game because you are pretending to be hurt? Micah Parsons never did that for a second.
No.
This team has never played a high-income starter in a preseason game for one snap. And he's not going to practice without a contract or without an agreement. So he wasn't faking an injury, but he does need to say what's bothering him that's keeping him from playing, and the NFL CBA has prohibited these guys from saying, I'm not playing because I should be holding out right now. So it's a round and round semantics thing, but I don't want to get back into Micah. What I want to get to is, okay, they're tagging Pickens. I agree on it. You do too. I'd like to get a long-term deal for a couple reasons, but I also recognize a long-term deal with a person who may have a spotty behavior does come with a risk. So maybe see how the tag goes, and see how incentivized his agent, who is actually Micah's agent, right?
Yeah.
Is it David Malgetta again?
It's someone with his firm, right? It's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the only thing I wanted to say before we move on is I've heard a few people say that's the type of guy I would flip for Max Crosby. And I just want to say I'm out on that. I appreciate Max Crosby very much, but Max Crosby is 28, I believe. No, he's going to be 29 by the next time we play football. And he averages 35.5 a year. And if I'm going to pay an edge guy 35.5, then it's Micah Parsons. Yeah. And I realize it would have been more than that, but the insanity of taking Micah's money and then giving it to Quinnen Williams and whether it's Trey Hendrickson or in this case Max Crosby, I just think you're back in the same place. For this defense to get good, I think you're going to have to go the route of the draft and some guys who are not the highest paid players at their positions over and over and over again. Seattle just taught us that they can win a Super Bowl without any players being the highest paid players at their position. Now, it's going to get more expensive, but the point is, I think what we're getting at, George, is would you rather have 5 unbelievable players or 15 really good players who are top 15 paid at their position, not top 5?
I would take the latter based on Seattle, but I don't think the Cowboys have a choice given their current structure right now.
No, once they botch the Dak thing so badly, they're sort of pot committed. But honestly, I think the way to go is to get Pickens on a tag and then use those 2 firsts on defense and maybe go get, one free agent who can help your defense, keep Javonte, probably, depending on where that goes. And I think that's probably your off season. We talked to Nakobe Dean at the Super Bowl, and I would love for you for one of these weeks before free agency to watch some of his tape and see what you think about him as a linebacker. Because the Christian Parker connection, I know it's easy for those of us to just say, okay, well, the new DC is the old guy with Philadelphia. Okay, who's free from that Philadelphia defense? And you come up with a few names, and the 2 that really jump off the page at people would be Nakobe Dean, because many of us were in love with him in his draft out of Georgia, and he's free. And he plays a position you absolutely have to improve, which is basically Mike linebacker. And the other one would be Reed Blankenship, the safety. And I don't know if I feel super strongly about Reed Blankenship, but I do know when they talk about valuation at like Spot Track, you could basically say Donovan Wilson and Reed Blankenship are in the exact same price point. So I would be interested in what Christian Parker thinks of those 2 guys, because obviously he knows them both. Wilson from his time at A&M and Blankenship from his time with the Eagles. But I would go get Nakobe Dean if I could do 3 for $45. Does that get you there? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
And keep in mind, Nakobe Dean, some of the best tape I've ever seen at Georgia. And by the way, maybe 3 for 45 is crazy. Maybe you can do it for 3 for 30. I don't know, but I just want to say we should point out he's been hurt a fair amount since the Eagles drafted him. So much so that the Eagles probably drafted Jihad Campbell, or is it Jihad? I always get those two mixed up. But they drafted him out of Alabama last year, probably partly to cover themselves in the event Nakobe gets hurt again. So I know injury prone doesn't get people excited, but Nakobe Dean can play, and I think you can get him.
Interesting. And it will be a very interesting offseason for the Cowboys, unrestricted free agency, and then the draft. All right, up next, let's talk about a couple of Cowboy legends. We've talked a lot about the Cowboys 50 years ago. Bob has been following along in the trail of 1975 and into 76, which ended in the Super Bowl, Super Bowl X. They got beat 21-17. Even though they didn't win it all, it's still one of the most remarkable seasons in Cowboys history. They were coming off of a year where they missed the playoffs in 1974. They had a really young team. The Dirty Dozen was drafted that year. Some of them turned out to be very prominent Cowboys, like Randy White at defensive tackle. But Roger led them to the Super Bowl that year. They had the Hail Mary in Minnesota. It was a magical year. And Roger did everything but win the Super Bowl that year to propel his greatness. And he would, a few years later, win a Super Bowl with the Cowboys in Super Bowl XII. But yeah, it was cool you did that and followed along with the legend of Roger and the 75 Cowboys.
Would you like an update?
I would love an update.
I think we're going to go for the 76 Cowboys next.
Oh, my gosh.
I think we're going to keep going.
Okay.
I think. Now, here's what's interesting.
Spoiler alert. The ground game does not go well to the point where next year they pull off an incredible trade and go get Tony Dorsett. But I don't want to spoil anything.
Well, thank you for that. But we'll get there, too, I bet, if the good Lord is willing. But a couple things. Yes, we're going to keep going. We're going to see where it takes us. But the NFL draft in 1975 was in January. The NFL draft in 1976 gets moved to April. So
that's very significant.
So we will have some downtime here for me to recuperate and rest up because the 76 draft, which won't be as fruitful as the 75 draft, but what is, and we'll get into that. So here's what I got on Roger Staubach for you today. So I want to set it up by telling you a story of I was at the Cowboys-Niners playoff game in San Francisco in 2022, I think, which was the final play of Zeke playing center and all the unintentional comedy of that sad day out there in San Francisco. I was at that game, and I was working at the Athletic at the time, and I think I conned them into paying my way to go cover a Cowboys road playoff game, as I would do periodically back then. And so I'm in the press box at the 49ers-Cowboys game. Now, to protect the innocent or even the guilty, I don't want to give you any context clues on who the media person was. In fact, I'm just going to call them a media person to even protect the possibility that it could be a man or a woman or old or young or just anything. But I want to tell you the conversation really quickly, okay? I'm sitting next to media person, and media person shows me a picture on media person's phone and asks me, do you know who this person is? And I look at it, and it's that moment where you think you're being pranked, George, because I look at it and I can see it's clearly Jerry Rice.
Okay.
But the person I'm covering this playoff game with does not know that that's Jerry Rice because of age. And we are in San Francisco, and media person was just on the field and noticed a commotion around this person. Let me take a picture and ask somebody to identify who this famous person is. And I'm thinking, you are identifying what is potentially the most famous and greatest person who's ever played the sport in the stadium for the franchise with which he had played. So I found that, on one hand, if it was you or one of my other close friends, I would have made enormous sport of it and laughed and called in other people to point and
laugh. You don't
know
who Jerry Rice is? Okay.
Right. But because it's a person from the next generation, I tried to be empathetic and remember that I'm getting older and I've watched lots of football, and to cover a football game does not require a vast test of your grasp of football history. So
yes,
to
basically
say it another way, they don't have to know who Jerry Rice is to cover the Cowboys-Niners game in 2022.
Right. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely not. Especially the next generation. They aren't nearly as familiar, even though he played to the age of 41.
Yes.
That's fine.
But I want to be accepting of
sure.
I want to be gracious enough, even though all my instincts and I think all of yours say that's a very tough one to forgive.
You didn't go to the Bob Arsenal and call him either a moron or a clown.
I did not. I just said, yeah, that's a Jerry Rice. You might want to Google him. Okay, so fast forward to this Super Bowl, and there's a great football book out right now by Chuck Klosterman, who's one of my favorite authors, and it's called Football.
You were telling me a little bit about this, yeah.
Yes, it's a really good book.
Sounds great.
I enjoy it very much, but he was being interviewed about his book at the Super Bowl, and so I'm listening, and I got my little Chuck Klosterman foam finger out, and he's being interviewed by somebody who is 40 years old. And in the book, Chuck confesses that he grew up a Cowboy fan, and that his very favorite player was Roger Staubach, and Chuck is my age, 53. And I found that interesting because nowhere in Chuck's work does he confess to be a big Cowboy fan. And he actually goes into it where he says, in retrospect, I still follow the Cowboys, but I don't really follow them from a diehard standpoint. Yeah. Now I follow them as a bit of a casual following. I want to see their games, but it doesn't keep me up at night like it once did. It doesn't, it's not. Whatever. Yeah. It's just changed for him. And he realized in the book that he wasn't a Cowboys diehard. He was a Roger Staubach diehard.
Sure.
And that was the connection with his heart. And then the interviewer said, I'm a little too young to know anything about Roger Staubach. In fact, I'm actually uncomfortable trying to pronounce his name. I'm not sure is it Staubach or whatever. And they get into this back and forth. And it occurs to me that a 40-year-old sports football media guy is now kind of out of the demo on anything having to do with Roger Staubach. Now, actually, that makes sense because Roger, I believe, is older than Jerry Jones. I think he's
right
like
at
2
the
months.
Same age, 84.
They're right at the same age. Yeah. They're right there. So there's no reason why a 40-year-old should know everything about Roger Staubach.
No.
But I bring it all up to ask you, do you realize dude, I could see you speaking on his behalf. Like you are an expert on Roger Staubach's life and times. You could teach a semester of Staubach 201. And I'm just curious if you realize that people listening to us right now, it may be leaving like everybody gets forgotten in
Absolutely.
history at a certain point.
Yeah.
And I feel like it took that conversation to remind me that a literal superhero in the city is probably well past anybody under the age of 50 knowing really what made him special.
That is true. And I started realizing that, Bob, a while back, let's say early aughts, because in the context of our show, if I had it to do it my way, I would have Charlie Waters, Drew Pearson, Cliff Harris on weekly.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And we had this conversation with the guys on my show, and I started thinking, our listeners, especially those in their 20s, they have no idea who these guys are.
None.
And that was pretty. That was a tough one for my Cowboy heart. So yeah, I would think now, and you're right, Jerry will not turn 84 until October. Roger just turned 84, so he's months older than Jerry Jones.
Isn't that incredible?
And you are right about this, but this is important though. I really didn't watch Johnny Unitas play much. Just barely as I was gaining sports consciousness, he was finishing off his career. But as a football fan, I read about him. I watched NFL films. I got the context. I knew who he was. I didn't watch Gale Sayers run,
right?
But I lived in Chicago a few years after he retired, and I figured out pretty quickly. Plus, I saw Brian's song, not a documentary, but that got me interested as a kid. I need to learn more about this. Was he really that great? Well, yeah. He may have been the greatest running back ever, cut short back when knee injuries would end a career without question. But I would say this to you, if you're listening to us and you're a big Cowboys fan and you just hear Roger's name and you watch A Football Life about Roger Staubach. And it's my favorite one. And I've seen every Football Life. I think they're great.
They are.
They're just so well done. A lot of NFL films, a lot of incredible writing. And if you're a Cowboy fan, if you're a human and you don't tear up at the end of that, you may want to go visit your doctor, because it is the best. Roger was the best. And there's so many people that say it, from former teammates to politicians, who say Roger represents the best in all of us. Roger served our country. Roger has morals. Roger, put his Christian faith out there, and yet he's hilarious. His line to Phyllis George about he likes sex just as much as Joe Namath, but he does it with the same woman. He's funny. He was funny when he did color commentary on CBS, when he took a couple of jabs at politicians. Roger is everything wrapped up in the one, let alone one of the greatest football players of all time. And at the heart of it, he's a husband and a dad that we all aspire to be. So, like I said, if you're a human, you go watch that, and especially if you're a Cowboys fan. And I wonder this, and maybe we can expand on this in another episode. Do you think Cowboy fans have a greater appreciation for their history than other teams? I would like to think yes, but then again, if you came along and your first memory was Super Bowl 30, or you don't remember Super Bowls because you were 2 years old in 1996, I don't know if you have a great appreciation for the incredible tradition of this franchise.
Well, I think at some point we should make sure Football Friends does a watch along of A Football Life Roger Staubach, and then makes it half of one of our off-season episodes. What do you think of that?
I love that. I'll even go one step further. We watch it, and then, he's 84. I don't know if he wants to do an hour, but maybe we do 5 or 10 minutes with the man himself.
That'd be incredible.
Yeah, that'd
be incredible. I would love to catch up. It's been a long time, and he's a superhero, and I realize that with our phones and with the news cycle and with everything, people may not want to dive into history as much, but when you talk about a literal legend of this franchise, I know, with all due respect to many other great Cowboys, the one name that has basically made the Cowboys America's team is Captain America.
Yep.
And there's just no way around it. And so, for all the reasons you detailed, and many that we don't have time to go over today, but we should, Roger Staubach should be part of your Cowboy fan experience, even if you already know a lot of this stuff, and it's just fun to sort of dive back in and appreciate a guy who just had another birthday. And again, I can't tell you there's anything more mind-blowing than thinking that Roger is older than Jerry Jones.
I know. I hadn't even thought about that in a while, but you are so right about that. And just a 10-second. I know we're running up, but hey, we can go 8 hours if we want to,
We probably can. Peter will protest, but we probably can.
But real quick, it's why am I a sports optimist? Because of Roger.
100%.
The guy I did North Texas games with, Hank Dickinson. We did games together for more than 20 years. And, North Texas be down 19 early in the fourth quarter, and I'd be there, okay, field goal, get a field goal here. Don't go for two the first time. And he'd always say, you are so optimistic. It can happen. And I've just had that revelation recently. I think the reason I'm like that is because of Roger. Roger made me think anything was possible.
Okay, you just made me think about this book again. So you're gonna have to read this book. Anyway, it's some of it will interest you, some of it may not. But he was telling a story about his dad. Klosterman was about football and life and watching games with your dad, and so they were apparently watching the Doug Flutie game together. And
I remember watching that too. My parents' living room. Thinking,
I guess
that guy's little. There's no way he can throw it that far.
Yeah, and I guess Dad was a defeatist or something because he was used to his teams always losing, and my dad is too, and just the way that they seem actually more frustrated when they watch football. But Klosterman's story is about his dad and the Doug Flutie game and what his dad was saying before the moment of the Hail Mary happened. And then the Hail Mary happened, and it was this profound moment where, oh my gosh, we just saw a miracle live. Like it just, you can watch 1,000 games and not see something like this happen, which of course Roger is pretty famous for his own Hail Mary. But I remember Klosterman telling the story in the book where his dad sort of shakes his head and says, you see that right there? That's why I am who I am and he is who he is. And you're just like, whoa. Like just that phrase, the dad's like, we were beat. Like, there's no hope. What's the use? What are we even throwing the ball in the end zone for?
Yeah.
And then he looks at that dude and he's like, well, that guy still believed. And that's why we won. And what sort of life lessons do you get
absolutely.
from that? So,
it's not over.
No, it's not over.
It's not over.
What I love about Football Friends is we both are wired for some reason to get kicked in the junk over and over and over again and to still think that someday we're going to win something. So I love that, and that's why I love talking ball with you. So
yeah, same.
Anyway,
ditto that.
That's good.
And
good
along
stuff.
those same
Put
lines,
Roger on the list.
Yes, got it on the list. And along those same lines, we pass along our condolences to the family of Carolyn Price, maybe the biggest Cowboy fan of all time. She passed this last week at the age of 83. And if you've been following the Cowboys the last, name your years, 10, 15, 20, 25 years especially, I would say in the last couple of decades, she really was at the forefront. She was the most vocal Cowboy fan starting at the first day of training camp until the last game of the season. Miss Price was usually on the front row saying something like this.
Romo! Dad! Tony Romo!
Man.
That may have been taken from training camp. I mean, she was like that as the players would go jogging out in the field. Quincy, don't let him punk you, just going nuts. She was, and when you had a chance to talk to her, she couldn't have been a sweeter person.
No, there's no doubt, and also all the years what always struck me about Miss Price, and she would be very clear that she believes in being called Miss Price, so don't Carolyn her.
Yeah.
But the thing that always struck me was pretty much any guy who ever put on a Cowboys uniform knew who she was.
Yeah.
And they would recognize her and they would appreciate her and just whatever the case may be. And so, yes, whether it was Hard Knocks or training camp or whatever, her voice might wear on you after a couple weeks of training camp because she did not mind calling attention, but boy, did she love her Cowboys, and boy, was she faithful. And I
think one time I said to her, it's practice. And she said, well, these are my babies.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
No, rest in peace, Miss Price.
Yes.
We'll never forget you. You made an incredible impression. And yes, I think just about every Cowboy fan knows they lost somebody who never left her spot on that wall for her Dallas Cowboys.
She believed, Bob.
She
never
did,
stopped believing.
And I think we might have even identified her during one interview as part of the problem because you love these guys too much, despite how much they disappoint us all.
Yeah, don't bring them cookies. They went 7-9 last year.
Yeah,
Tony Romo!
unbelievable.
Tony Romo!
Shout out to the Dallas Morning News for
absolutely. Yes, thank you, Dallas Morning News, for that audio. And thank you to Peter Welton for producing this. We went a little long, Bob, but man, week by week, the conversations just get deeper and better, don't they?
They really do, and it's funny because each time when we start this, we'll be like, well, this one won't be as long.
45 minutes.
We keep going longer, so who knows? Who knows? Maybe 8 hours, here we come.
Oh, you're the best, Bob. Let's talk again next week. What do you say?
We will be right back here, Georgie.
We'll do it on the Musers, the podcast Cowboys edition.